Hello, I'm Loren Sederstrom, and I'm sitting in for Tim Kinley tonight. I have a guest host, Lanoux, and he's going to help me out today. And we're going to be covering a couple major areas today. We're going to be covering some legislation that's going on at the state capitol, which is very significant. And the other half of the show, we're going to be talking about the Grant Charter Commission. They're starting to form a charter. They're going through the processes, and this is a long process to define a charter which is very similar to a constitution that's above a city. Most cities have no rules of governance. It's pretty much wide open. But if you have a charter, it gives the city and the administrators specific rules that they have to follow. Stillwater, for example, has a charter, and so do several others. So we're going to start tonight with a bill that's in the House. Its House file is 957. The Senate file is 775. We've already had a hearing on it, and it's passed through the Policy Committee unanimously. And we're going to tell you a little bit about that. And Larry here is going to help me. And if we could cut to the camera, there we go. It's Minnesota's file, 775, House file 957. No school may be built within a quarter mile of a dump site. Existing schools within a quarter of a mile of the dump site must provide written annual notice to parents and staff. A and B do not apply if chemical tests show results of contamination below residential land standards. And it passed a unanimous consent in education. Senator Torres Ray has promised to have a hearing on this bill. And Erin Brockovich has offered to come and testify at Senate hearing on this. It's a bill that offers prevention, awareness, and opportunity for early detection. The bill was drafted with direction and input from the MPCA, which is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the State Revisor's Office, and state legislatures. And we'd like to give a shout out to Bob Eliff, who worked very hard. We're on our fifth revision of this particular one. And so anyway, it's the parents' right to know. Your child should be as safe at school as they are at home. Previously, they allowed schools to be built on sites that had met the industrial requirements, which is 10 times higher than residential. So what we're saying is a child should be just as safe in school as he is at home, and they should have the same standards. By the way, of the 334 districts offered in this testimony against this bill, only one showed up, and that was Mahtomedi 832, which was the 12th of the dirty dozen of schools in Minnesota that have been built on former Superfund sites. And it's a good bipartisan bill. There's 5 sponsors in the Senate, which are bipartisan. There's 17 in the House that are bipartisan, and it's we need support on this bill. So going on, if we can, one of the things that we're talking about is school on the landfill. No school will be constructed on land within a quarter mile of a dump site and must provide written notice by regular mail no later than 60 days prior to the beginning of the school to tell all students enrolled at the school and employees who work at the school that it's located within 1/4 mile of a landfill. Now this is the words that were added by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Paragraphs A and B do not apply if the agency, after reviewing the soil test results, issue a written determination that the school district confirming the level of contamination measured for all chemicals sampled and tested are below the agency current intrusion screening values, which is ISV, or soil reference values, SRV, as applicable for those chemicals for residential land. Okay. The ISVs are based on cancer risks, and if you can look here, it says related cancer ISV, residential is 2, industrial is 20. Why would you want to put a child in a building that is not suitable to put a house on? I mean, that's insane. The current standards are, again, the industrial. We're changing that. Your child should be as safe at home as they are at school, or at school as they are at home. Call your legislators. Erin Brockovich, again, is going to come help. She wants to prevent cancer environments whenever possible. Awareness of hidden dangers once determined the health risks exist. And opportunity for early detection. Now, the Minnesota Department of Health and the MPCA has just radically changed the standards. As a matter of fact, there's a site in Washington County, Lakeland area, Bayport, that they've classified as a Superfund site because they lowered the standards. It used to be 4 parts per million or billion. Now it's down to 0.4. So what they're finding is what used to be considered safe is no longer considered safe. So they're reclassifying many of these sites. There's 8 of them alone in Minnesota that they've reclassified as Superfund sites to deal with this. And that's one of the problems. And of course, I'm sure you've heard about the earlier this year down in the Como neighborhood of Minneapolis, which is south of Hennepin by 18th Avenue. Their General Mills had their research facility and they let TCEs go on the ground. Well, this block right there, that is a quarter mile, 1 block, okay? And you can see how far the plume has traveled. It's almost over to the University of Minnesota. It's traveled over 1 mile. So ladies and gentlemen, it's very important that we be aware of this. And for example, if you start having some health issues, you're more aware, you go to the doctor and pay attention. When we went down to this particular meeting in the Como neighborhood and I filmed it for my All Around Grant show, one woman over 40 years has had 4 different types of cancer and she's lived in that neighborhood. Well, that should be a subtle hint that maybe something's wrong.
Well, Loren, I'd like to step in here. We're all aware of the busy schedule Erin Brockovich has. She gets 3,000 emails and calls per month. That relates to roughly 36,000 per year. And she can only do between, actually handle between 100, per year. That's 1 every 3 days. And so for her to offer and feel strongly against this bill that she'll take her time and testify is pretty important. So I don't know if Tim's got this, but this is a picture of Mahtomedi School where Wildwood is, and I know we haven't come in on it, perhaps, Dallas, if we still could, because this is a pretty good document. Pretty good picture there, and it shows Bel Air Sanitation when it was in operation. If we look down here, we see Minnesota Superfund sites. Now, this was taken off the state agency's website. It talks about Bel Air Sanitation. So the photo is of Bel Air in operation. The X you see sitting, it's a little harder when you're doing it with a finger, right there is where they put the new elementary school. And you can see nothing would grow on that piece of land when it was a dump site. And the other documentation we have here is one, and it's the application to take it out of a Superfund program. And I know it's a little hard to catch
It's
on.
the VIC program, Voluntary Incentive and Cleanup. And what we have to say about this, ladies and gentlemen, is it's kind of like if you run over somebody with your car and you're charged with manslaughter. Then you go to court and you plea bargain down to simple assault. That's basically what the VIC program was. They slap you. You say, I was a bad boy, I have a dump site. They slap your hand and say, okay, you put 2 foot of clay over the top of it and we'll call it good.
The one thing on this document that I find rather disturbing is that back in 2002, they applied to take it out of a Superfund program, and the applicant here was Mr. Tom Carr, City of Grant, Mayor of Grant at the time, and Mark Wallach, Mahtomedi Public Schools. Now, on the application at the very bottom, it says current property owner if different from the applicant. And the owner at that time was Waste Management of Minnesota. So it wasn't Waste Management that applied to take it out of a Superfund program. I believe it was the schools and the Mayor of Grant so that they could get funding to buy the property. I don't think it was a good move. I know Mahtomedi has in its comprehensive plan that it states that the Wildwood Elementary, when being merged, should go to the O.H. Anderson site. So I think it would have been a much wiser choice to put them on 24 safe acres than to put them on a Superfund site. So we're a little short-sighted, and I think we're seeing the...
Speaking of short-sighted, if I can hitchhike on that, Larry, the testimony, Mark Larson, you said the Mahtomedi School came down, the superintendent, Mark Larson, came down and said, well, they've been looking for land since the 50s or 60s, and they made it sound like this was the only thing available. I, in fact, shortly after Halloween, met a man whose great uncle sold 60 acres to the Mahtomedi School District in the early 60s. Now, folks, they have O.H. Anderson and 24 safe acres. They sold the other 36 for development, so they had 60 acres where they could have put everything safe. But they sold it for development to raise more tax money, and this O.H. Anderson, they could have put this school on the O.H. Anderson site, just made an addition, and it would have been fine. But they didn't. And again, once again, they kind of tell you the half-truths, like they're saying that they make money in open enrollment. Well, I guess they kind of do if you call, taking it out of the taxpayer's pocket.
I'll take it a little bit easier. I'm going to read just a quick statement from the Mahtomedi School District. The Mahtomedi, and this is from the Mahtomedi Comprehensive Plan. It says, the Mahtomedi School District may explore the feasibility of consolidating Wildwood Elementary School and O.H. Anderson School into one school. If the district determines that such a consideration would be beneficial, it is possible that Wildwood Elementary would close and the site would be converted or redeveloped into another use. Therefore, it is important that the City of Mahtomedi and the Mahtomedi School District coordinate on future land use issues relating to the Wildwood Elementary School and O.H. Elementary School. Well, we have documents showing that they plan on merging schools, but they actually are not even following Mahtomedi's comprehensive plan.
After the plan was written, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks, they shifted gears and decided to put it on the former Superfund site?
It was just a ploy. Mahtomedi wrote its comprehensive plan, and it adopted it a week before they came to us and voters and said, we want to put in new schools. They didn't say we're going to put the new elementary school on a dump site. Mahtomedi showed in their comprehensive plan they wanted it in Mahtomedi. But truth of the matter is, in 2002, they bought the land to do that. And the documentation we have actually shows that they plan on bringing O.H. Anderson onto the Wildwood or the Bel Air sanitation site. So once again, do not believe your government. So
the other interesting thing is,
go ahead, he's good.
Oh, we have a phone call. Caller, are you with us? Question or comment?
I am. I would like you to expand on the idea. I was looking, and I haven't. I just turned you guys on, but I haven't. Would like you to expand on the idea that I looked at the agenda for the Grant City Council meeting for next week. And doing that, I had watched the video that you had, Loren, on the Charter Commission, and on was a fellow, Tim, I don't know if I'll say his name right, Tim
Dewesky.
Lewinsky, or yes, and he had an issue that he talked to Steve Bonin, City Council on Grant, about the fact that he lives on Lost Lake, and Lost Lake has the mercury, and I don't know if you guys talked about this already, that's coming, he believes, from the Mahtomedi school site. It's following the sewer and water line back and going into his lake, but the issue was that I saw from that video from the Charter Commission meeting that Steve Bonin was going to put it on the agenda at Grant, and part of the bigger issue is that I don't see it on the agenda, but when people need to understand, this is what I'd like you to talk about, when it's not part of the official meeting, it kind of gets swept aside, this business of let's talk about it in the back room. We don't know who supports it and who's against it. We don't know if Carr or Loban or Huber, if those guys care about clean water and mercury in the lake, and talk about the fact that the school site was supposed to be tested every 6 months under that conditional use permit. So I'm going to hang up and listen to your conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, caller. We are going to be talking about that in the second half. We'll be bringing up a photo of the agenda, and the agenda is extremely short. And we will also run the clips of Tim Dewuski talking about the tests and the mercury, but that's going to be in our second half. So if you can hang on with that.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We're going to finish up with the no school at a dump site bill, because there's a lot of things to talk about on that. So hang in there, and we'll get it to the second half.
We'll tie it all together.
And the thing I was going to talk about is there's so many disingenuous and half-truths that are put out there. One of the things, when they were saying going for the levy that failed last year by 56%, I might add, they said it's only going to cost $1,700, which is the half-truth. But if you realize there's a 31% open enrollment in Mahtomedi schools, that means 1/3 of the students' parents do not pay for the levy, so that shifts to residents. So instead of $1,700 per taxpayer, not per student, we're talking per taxpayer, they're not going to pay $1,700 per student. It's going to be more like $2,500 to $2,600, because when the funding comes from a student comes from out of district, they used to have $6,800 per student. Well, the old student only brings $6,000 with him. He leaves $800 in the district and all their levy money. Well, if they're spending $12,800 to educate a student, they have to make up the $6,800 from local taxes. And as a result, Mahtomedi's tax, of the taxes that we pay out there in Grant, 53 cents out of every dollar goes for the school. Now you go to Stillwater and they pay 43%. Forest Lake pays 32%, and normally it's 30 to 35%
Lauren,
is what
that's a bill we need to look at next time, is to limit abusive open enrollment. In the meantime, let's maybe run the clips that we have on the bill so that the people can understand exactly what Senate File 775 and House File 957. And I want to give a special thank you to Representative Bob Detmer, who's done a great job working on this.
Well, so the first clip is going to be some of the testimony, and we're going to see Bob Detmer introducing and talking about the bill. So if we can play the first clip, control room.
Is security of knowing that their child attends a safe school, and free students from those that are dangerous. However, many schools are not free of chemicals that pose invisible threats to the health of our staff and students. Increasingly, schools are strapped for much needed funds for when they come to constructing of new schools and new buildings. And astonishingly, building schools on contaminated land is generally illegal. My investigation in this issue, we found that only 5 states around the country prohibit or restricting siting schools near hazardous or toxic waste sites. Only 5 states have anything on the books. The community groups featured in case studies were shocked to find that their state had no laws or regulations that prohibited a school from building on toxic soil. To truly protect the health of our nation's children and the health of the records trend, we should be calling for local and state and federal legislators to pass laws that will prohibit future schools from being built near contaminated land in their communities.
That was Representative Bob Detmer, who was a teacher at Forest Lake High School and a wrestling coach. He spent many hours in the high school and on the fields, which in this case, in Mahtomedi's case, is in fact contaminated. And so he's putting forth the bill. Now, we're only giving you a few clips of the testimonies. The next clip we have is of my testimony, and I cover a lot in a very short space, talking about children, their immune systems, et cetera, et cetera. So if we could play clip number 2, please.
My name is Loren Sederstrom.
I'm from the city of Grant, and I just represent the normal citizens. I'm not part of any particular group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Whatever your testimony.
My name is Loren Sederstrom, and I'm a retired business education teacher from White Bear High School, 29 years in the classroom. Now, over time, our knowledge of toxic substances has increased tremendously over the last 30 years. We didn't know 30 years ago what we know now. Science, we've gone to the moon, we've got computers. As a result, regulatory agencies are upgrading their standards to create a safer environment for us. We're not aware of things that used to cause cancer, carcinogens. Okay, here's the article, January 16th. In the Pioneer Press, the headline was, Plume may return to Superfund list. Until recently, the problem was largely considered solved, but the State Department of Health changed the guidelines. The department slashed the allowable level of chemicals to 0.4 parts per billion, less than 1/10 the previous allowable level. So in other words, they're becoming more aware of the things that can harm us. In my opinion, I believe that was a very wise decision. Also, most of you are aware, in the southeast area of Minneapolis, in Como, the problem with General Mills and the plume of TCE that is going through there, that's traveled approximately 1 mile. It's very difficult to contain these carcinogens. The next important point is we have to realize our children are our future. Like I said, I spent 29 years in the classroom helping young people. They should be as safe at school as they are at home. That's very important. The State Environmental Resource Center indicates that children are most vulnerable on 3 levels. First, and I wasn't aware of this, per pound, they take in more air, water, and food than adults do. The second thing is, their undeveloped immune systems are not able to handle the toxins as well as adults. So when young people are exposed to toxins, they don't have the ability and the resiliency that adults do. That's very important. The last thing about that this pointed out was they have a longer period of time to develop the disease, their whole lifetime. Like with the Aaron Brockovich was in Fridley, there were 30 girls that went to their 20th reunion, and they all had the same brain cancer. What ended up coming out is she did the research, and it was next to a class 1 dump site, the high school. There wasn't, 20, 30 years ago, that knowledge wasn't available. One of the last things is parents have a right to know. For example, in the school newsletters, if they use pesticides, herbicides, they have to notify them, or about asbestos, and air quality has to be included. Schools have to notify parents about this. So what I'm asking is, we'd like you to take your consideration and pass this bill, because our children are our future. Thank you for allowing me to address this group.
There we go. I think I covered a lot of things, that children don't have weakened immune systems, they're not fully developed, and they're now bringing it down to residential standards, which is very significant, and it's interesting that they're also adjusting the standards. So we have kind of a double whammy here. You know, people are beginning to realize things can affect us in the environment. So that's...
And there's one thing that we have to be aware of now. Politicians often use the term, the children are our future. Now let's put them to the test here when this bill comes up. I know recently, as yesterday, we made appointments with 13 out of 15 senators are going to be on that committee, and we had the opportunity to speak with Senator Chuck Uyghur, and it was very interesting. He asked us at that point, what does the school district, what is their opinion on this bill? And I says, ironically, Chuck, I says, 334 school districts in the state of Minnesota, and only one showed up to testify against this bill. It happened to be Mahtomedi School District. So I says, and I know you represent Mahtomedi School District, so be very aware when you do that. Although you represent Mahtomedi School District, you do represent the constituents, and we have a chance to protect children and their health, which is, I'd rather protect a child's health than the school's financial interests. So I'm sure Chuck's going to do the right thing as he goes through and looks at the EPA school guidelines and everything, and he sees the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency
And the Minnesota Department of Health are behind this?
are all behind this bill. So we're expecting Chuck to support this bill, and let's see how we do, and let's hold our politicians accountable.
Let's see some more testimony on this, Bill? If we,
So certainly, the union should stand up for their teachers and say they need to have a safe school site for the teachers.
can we go to the next clip?
Well, let's take a look.
The House Chair.
That's right.
Number one, we're looking at residential standards, and two, that this legislation does not eliminate local control. If you look at the new language, I don't know if you've read the new language, but it does allow local control, and it does not restrict. If you go through the bill, there are paragraphs A and B do not apply if the schools had already done this work ahead of time before building those buildings. And it also includes charter schools, not just your normal public schools.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm not making myself clear probably, but I'm just, are these 275 schools that have been identified as close to these waste sites, contaminated sites, can I then assume from what you said that all 275 have been ameliorated, that they no longer would be within this quarter mile of contaminated site, the ones that already exist?
Control room?
Mr. Chair, I think.
Yep, we got the clips mixed up there. There was supposed to be Larry testifying. I don't know if we can retrieve
Might be on that DVD yet.
Can we control him? Do we have the DVD?
In the meantime, I think the important issue is the people that came to testify were all from the Mahtomedi School District. They had a paid lobbyist that came to testify. The number that they were stating, 275, truly was a fictional number. Representative Detmer had to correct her and say he's worked with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the real number is less than 100 schools this will affect. And once they do get a chance to test their land, probably less than that will actually have to give notifications. But if it's above residential standards, the people still have that right to know.
Well, I see we have a phone call. Caller, are you with us? Question or comment?
Well, this is the most famous man in Maplewood, and I'm calling because I want to escape from Maplewood into Grant. But I was there on February 20th for the commission meeting at Mahtomedi City Council meeting there. And anyway, when I went there, I did hear and I did see the sparkle in Steve Bonen's eye when he promised to put that man named Tim from Mahtomedi on the agenda at the next Grant City Council meeting. So, I say that if you can't trust a used car salesman, who can you trust? and do you know if they put that on the agenda yet to have Tim come before the city council?
Well, we're going to be putting that on here shortly, but we've got a copy of the proposed agenda, and there is a new business on there. There is an old business. It's a very, very shortened meeting, so I think they're trying to avoid some issues, perhaps.
They're using the ostrich effect. Stick your head in the sand and hope that you don't get run over.
Right. Well, isn't that a rule in Grant that one city council member
it's an item on the agenda?
You're absolutely right, caller. We have a weak mayor system, and probably somebody should inform the mayor because he seems to be using executive order quite a bit lately and ignoring his own bylaws and stuff. And that's part of the reason we want to move on to a charter is to offer those checks and balance. But it only takes one council member to put an item on the agenda. Now, once it's put on the agenda, if the others object to it, they can, during the consent agenda, ask to have that pulled. At that time, you'll have to have a show of hands, and that's how you hold your elected officials accountable. See how they vote on issues. So it should go to that course, but so far we don't see it going that way.
Well, I did find it very interesting, the large amount of pollution found in the lake right next to the Wildwood Elementary School that they just built there in Grant. So, did they really clean up the soil, or was that just some kind of, I promised that's what we really did, we spent your money well, and they didn't do anything? Or what's the answer to this when you have a large amount of mercury found in the water?
I think what we'll do, caller, is if we can get to these tapes, let's find out exactly what the gentleman from Mahtomedi's concerns are, and we can give you a little clearer answer.
Okay, well, I'll hang up and watch the show.
Thanks for your call, caller. Okay, if we can go play the next clip, that number 45. And that will, this is the gentleman that is complaining about the pollution.
Contaminated soils. That's why I brought the pictures tonight. A horizontal separation of 10 feet must be maintained between the water line and the outer limit of the existing municipal waste dump. Removal of contaminated soil and backfilling with fill soil is not a permissible alternative. Please revise the plans as necessary. If the sewage tanks are located outside municipal easements, under municipal ownership, please provide the manufacturer, model number, and tank, and provide specific specifications for the pumping equipment. Please indicate the backflow prevention method or device to be used to protect the irrigation well. Please submit the requested information properly so when you complete your plan for review, no construction related to the above referenced plans shall begin until approval by our office.
That's what he was talking about is they put the sewer line in and it's supposed to be a buffer between the contaminated ground of 10 feet, and so they're supposed to put it through soil that hasn't been backfilled or landfilled. Well, we went and took pictures of it, and you could see when they dug through, there was all kinds of residual trash in the stuff that they were digging through. And that's what this man is saying, is because once you dig through a contaminated area, that acts as a conduit for any pollutants to follow because it's a path of least resistance. The regular soil is packed hard, and when it isn't packed or damp around the rest of it, it'll follow that right there. Okay, I see we have another phone call. Caller, are you with us? Question or comment?
I just have a comment to make. I think that on that gentleman that you just showed the clip on, that is his second time to the Charter Commission. The first time he came there and told about his plight that he's been having, and he said that the city of Mahtomedi said it wasn't their problem and he should go talk to the city of Grant. Now, it's very interesting that the second time, that night that you just showed the clip, that they tried to get, or Steve Bonin tried to dodge the bullet to say, yeah, he'd get it on there, but eventually he had to say, yeah, I'll get it onto the meeting. And from what I've heard, Tom Carr has told us, the city clerk, that by no way is he going to want that put on there. So just to bring you up to speed of what the citizens are hearing out here and what I've seen myself when I was at the Charter Commission, so.
We're going to have the agenda, we're going to put that on after we run the clip where Steve says he's going to put it on, so if you can hang in there with us, caller, we're going to have a couple more clips and we'll be bringing that right up, but thank you for making us aware of it.
Okay, bye.
Okay, can we play the next clip, please? This is the same gentleman.
Minimum horizontal separation between the portable water service lines and any source of pollution that may contaminate the potable water supply. To date, our plan review engineer has received confirmation from the project design engineer that a 10-foot separation is provided to meet code. That's why I have pictures. We also received information from the project engineer indicating that the 3 test strips will be conducted in the presence of the owners, environmental engineer. Stations will be recorded to ensure that 10-foot horizontal separation from the environmental engineer. Locations will be recorded to ensure that 10-foot horizontal separation from the contaminating source and outside of the water supply pipe. In addition, the environmental engineer will test the soils. Prior to backfilling, our responsibilities as it relates to the water supply service line is to perform code compliance, review and conduct inspections to the Minnesota Plumbing Code.
Well, those tests were never made. There should have been tests 2 years in a row now. They didn't test the soils, they haven't tested the runoff water, so that's another issue of contention, that the tests haven't been done. We're just finding out that the plan, we're trying to get the approval of the actual plan, and the State Department of, I believe, was Plumbing or Health that called back, and they actually...
Department of Labor and Industry is where that comes from in the plumbing division, but yeah, they have not yet provided documentation. And I got to applaud this gentleman for getting up, standing up for his rights, because he's not only trying to protect his lake, which is now contaminated with mercury, which has been recently tested and was clear for the last several years.
4 years. Mercury hasn't
They've been doing an annual test, and all they get is a typical phosphorus that comes from a runoff water. But since they put in that sewer line, they have been getting mercury in that lake, and he's going to every avenue and channel to do it properly, and he's just seeking information.
We have one more clip on him. Let's run that, and then we can talk on the other side.
The pictures that I have, I don't see a 10-foot separation there. Based on this information, this does not pass the smell test. Who voted to poison our children, teachers, and area residents? Who is liable for any future illnesses associated with this former dump? I'd like you to provide me with the documentation of who signed off on the new plan, and can you assure me that Mahtomedi's contamination is not coming from the new Wildwood Elementary School and former dump? Whose obligation is it to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens?
Well, he's asking for that. This is the second time in. He wants to get on the agenda, and of course, they're dodging the bullet. They're hiding as best they can. And now we're going to play a clip where he's talking to a councilman to see about getting it put on the agenda. So if we could play the next clip, please.
Is that like when Steve
No,
put
this
me
is
on the
the
agenda to
number
ask him for the
60.
taping and stuff, and I got stuck off the agenda? Is that the...
It probably
that's how
will.
easy
Steve
it
will
is?
at least take the opportunity to ask to have it put on the agenda. It will be the
I
mayor's
was on the
decision to
agenda,
take
but
it
then I
off.
got booted off.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any difference. If we're going to go through the proper procedure. Steve, could you give him a commitment tonight that you would bring it as a councilman to be put on as an agenda item?
I would certainly be happy to talk with him and introduce him to the clerk administrator and go through the procedure to get it put on the agenda. As we all know, if it's not a subject that they want to discuss, it may or may not end up on that agenda. but I would certainly be happy to work with you. But what I'm concerned with here is that this open forum is giving people a little false hope or false picture, because he's here thinking that he's talking to a body that's working for the city of Grant, that has a direct communication with the council, and in fact, there's a little hostility between the the Charter Commission and the council. This group does not set the agenda for the council. To get up at public comment if you'd like to,
Does not allow public comment, though. That's why I'm here tonight.
I would be happy to get you on the agenda to come and speak to the council at the next meeting. Whether they will allow it or not, that will be decided at the beginning of the meeting. I don't want to give you a false hope. Just because I get you on the agenda and it's written on the agenda, it doesn't mean that somebody won't pull it at the last minute before you get a chance to speak. They'll take a vote, and if 3 of the people decide they don't want to hear from you last minute, then they'll pull it. I'm just preparing you. Maybe it won't happen, maybe it will, but I just want you to get a realistic idea of investing your time and my time and what the result may or may not be.
There, it kind of tells you where it's happening.
Well, it kind of shows that the councilman did promise him that he would put it on the agenda. You saw it live.
Well, the proof is in the pudding now. If control room could put the agenda up, gee whiz, what do we see there? Call to order, pledge of allegiance, approval of the agenda, approval of the consent agenda. And if we can move it up a little bit, please.
It looks like we're going to approve a snow plowing contract, a grading contract. Then we get into our staff deals. The city planner has nothing to talk about. Our city attorney has no action items. There is no listing for old business. Under new business, it's exactly empty.
Unfinished business is empty.
And discussion items at city council, they don't look like they have anything to discussion items. So at this point, it's not been the agenda's been set, and they have not put it on there. So either we got to check. I mean, that's kind of what the other caller said. Councilman Steve Bonin promised to put it on there. Folks, you all just witnessed that. It only takes one councilman to do that. So if he is true to his word, he will have it on the agenda, and then we'll get an accountability as to what other councilman removed it. It's obvious Mr. Bonin agreed to have it on. Let's see where the other people stand. Who knows, maybe after they call the vote, maybe Steve will even call to remove it off there, but a promise is a promise unless maybe you're a politician. I'd rather see a statesman that stands and what he stands for.
Well, we're going to see that. Again, it doesn't look hopeful. It looks like it's going to be a very short meeting. Now we're continuing on the same path with this charter commission. Again, the citizens do not have a voice in Grant. They've cut off public comment. When public comment is the end of the meeting, they shut off the camera, and you can say something. Well, the whole idea of public comment is people come up at the beginning of the meeting and make the concerns public, so other residents can be aware of the concerns of some citizens, and maybe they have the same concern and they just haven't had an opportunity to express it. So that's the concept of public comment, making the council aware of situations, conditions, or ideas that they may not be aware of. But we're going to go back to this public comment at the Charter Commission. If we could play number 48, Bob Test.
832's amended CUP. Now, while the document is approximately 5 pages long, I think item number 14 is the strongest one that we should look at. And that is, they agreed by accepting the CUP to do water testing and that they would meet the stormwater management levels. Now, a couple of city council meetings back, this question was placed to the council, which turned to our city engineer and said, and his comment was, well, we've got it for compaction. So they have not had, since 2011, any water testing done on the athletic field, because that's what this is for. Now, I reviewed my tapes that I was there, and I reported all the construction that was done, and they never drilled a hole, a well, for water testing. Maybe they planned on just scooping it off the surface, I don't know, but our city...
And we've had some pictures of that where there's some pretty nasty water out there. Again, they earlier did do some testing before they did anything, but you have to realize there's about 80,000 substances, and if you test for 3 of them, if you don't test for TCE, PCBs, lead, or any of the other types of things, you're not going to get it. So you have to have a specific test for each item. Now, if we can go on, we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan, or that this person's talking about the comprehensive plan. If we could play the next one, please.
City water, sewer, and other utilities, which came out of our own comprehensive plan, dated 2008, and updated update number 87, which states that the goal was to maintain the rural character of the community, including the density appropriate to the diversity of rural and agricultural area and the use of on-site water and sewer services.
If I can just kind of touch on the comprehensive plan that, Bob was talking about there is that, yes, we want to enhance and maintain our rural lifestyle. And we've got documentation that says that we're supposed to use strictly sewer and water.
Septics and wells, not sewer and water.
Yeah, septic and well, and they will not provide sewer and water.
When I was the chair of the Planning Commission, there was never a mention of sewer and water. It was always well and septic. They did a lot of things. One of the things they did is they called an emergency meeting that wasn't posted properly, and they quickly passed the CUP through. That was at 5 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, Mayor Carr was at the Mahtomedi City Council meeting working on a joint powers agreement to get sewer and water into the city of Grant. And I had contacted Met Council. They called me into the office and said, we want a meeting. There were 3 council members, an engineer. Did you call this Met Council? I said, well, I certainly did. Well, you shouldn't call them. We don't want them to know we're bringing it in. I'm thinking, you village idiots. You've just petitioned and changed Mahtomedi's comprehensive plan. They're applying to Met Council. They're not going to figure it out. We have a bunch of rocket scientists out there, folks.
I think what we're finding, Loren, is that we have documentation here that says they had to do testing, and now that's not being done. We run over all our own rules. Nobody's held accountable. We need a checks and balance, and that's the purpose of our charter to start with, is to have a governance where somebody can be accountable.
In the Charter Commission itself will review things. They meet several times a year, 3 or 4. They work hand in hand. Now, it works very well in Stillwater. There's that one picture that you could hold up.
Well, we've all seen it. It's all the orange sludge. It's just
on top,
coming right out of the ground. And
one of the things that we're having happen is the mayor is not honoring our ordinances. It says all reviews have to be taken care of by the Planning Commission. In January of last year, he got rid of the Planning Commission. Now he's making ordinance changes. One of the ordinance changes they just did was they allowed a supper club to be put in A2. This is basically against the comprehensive plan. The Met Council has said they do not want to see leapfrog development. A2 is agricultural too. It's larger tracts of land. Okay, we have a commercial zone that they could put this in. They're putting this on a major highway, a county road, out in the middle of the country. There's no commercial things out there, period.
Lauren, if I can interrupt you, this is a part, and it comes right out of our comprehensive plan. And it says, Goal 1, maintain the rural character of the community, including densities appropriate to diversified rural and agricultural areas, and the use of private on-site sewer and water supply. Key policy, the City of Grant has no plans to provide city water or sewer in any manner. As a permanently rural community, this policy will continue to be the guiding framework through at least the year 2030, and the city will not provide these services. Domestic waste will be treated on-site, and water supply will be the responsibility of the owner. So, as you can see, this is right out of our comp plan. I can show another documentation where Mayor Carr stated that we should have used well and septic, and all the comprehensive plans, all your resolutions, and everything in there means nothing if you use executive order and you don't adhere to them. So,
Well, he's been doing a lot of things, like getting rid of the planning commission. Another one of the things he did in 2006, he passed a resolution to support 4-H. 2008, they took down the banners and basically encouraged 4-H to meet somewhere else.
right, and maybe we can, if we could go to that deal and explain, maybe where it says clip 61 here with Jack, we'll explain a little bit better.
Type of government. What do we mean by that? Well, if you picture your government, your city council, as a vending machine, what you do is you put in your taxes and you're hoping that you'll get out certain goods and services, and you have certain expectations which you believe will come out of that machine. And when it comes out right, it's fine. But when it doesn't come out right, you're not very happy. And when you're not very happy, what do? You pound on that machine. And when that doesn't work, you talk to that machine. And when it doesn't talk back to you, what do? You try and get your money back. So you kick that machine. And in some parts of the world, they take that machine and they throw it down and they bust it up in little pieces. And that's not a joke, folks. We're seeing what's happening in Kyiv. But it's only 200 years ago when a bunch of people in this country decided, hey, we've had enough of this government, and we're going to form a republic here, and we're going to run this country a little bit differently, and we're going to extend the rights of the people. And so it's we the people. And so that's where we are. And I think it behooves us on this commission to keep that in mind as we go forward, because we have a duty. Our first duty here is to decide whether or not it's in the best interest of the city for us to establish a charter for the city. I believe it is. Some of you may not believe it is, but that's our first duty. And if we decide to go, we write a constitution. If we decide not to go, we just walk away from this. But rules are those things by which we are governed. And there are people's rights within that government. And that's what I think we need to address. And when Joy spoke, some of this stuff almost brings tears to my eyes. I think we're living in a situation where we are not in a free country. And we see some of the strife and trials and tribulations in the shootings going on, and we say, well, that won't happen here. Well, I can recall a couple of riots in my day. It can happen. I don't think it's going to happen here. But we can do a lot of things, I think, to make things better in Grant. And that's what we're trying to do. It's not to try and make things worse. We're trying to make things better. And so what I'm going to propose tonight is that we include in this charter draft that we're going through an article entitled Civic Engagement. And so I'm going to make that motion. that we include an article of civic engagement in our Constitution. And I'm going to give it a preamble that says, in order to enhance the sustainability of the community, residents shall be extended the opportunity to participate in its governing process through inclusion in the deliberations, planning, visioning, and implementation of city council decisions. And to that end, all non-staff council appointed positions will be filled from applications submitted by non-elected citizen volunteers. Volunteer duties will be detailed in a job description written by the council, and citizens will be permitted to address the council at all open council meetings. The council shall appoint a 7-member permanent standing and staff planning committee.
Dear.
Very well said. I said, as vice chair of the Charter Commission, having people surround you that are very well versed, very passionate, are going to make this job a little bit easier.
If I can push you a little bit, Lair, one of the problems we had is the mayor tried to intimidate the SCC employee that was helping get some of this filmed. And if we could play the last clip, we're not going to get all of it in, but they're talking about what we can do when the mayor is doing things that he shouldn't be doing.
Well, I believe Mayor Carr, I don't know if he voted for Obama, but he sure has figured out that executive order. So let's move on.
Could try to remove him through the district court for intimidation, if you truly believe that. I think you'd have to have a pretty strong resolution or pretty strong facts. I mean, you'd have to have this young man sign an affidavit or actually come before the commission and indicate what the mayor said, and I think anyone could make a motion at that time to remove Tom Carr, but ultimately the district judge has the authority to remove members only. So it'll be the district judge, in my opinion. Now, that's a quick rough-hand view of it, but that comes from the statute.
Thanks for joining us, and watch me in the All Around Grant Show Monday night at 7 o'clock.